Lou Jackson found himself immersed in a very, very long dream where he saw fields with rice paddies, the gleams of swords, an immortal sect, a woman, and a huge lake hand over the supreme yin breathing Keek Sutra and the moonlight's secret decree. And will only cripple your cultivation. A pleasant but cold female voice echoed in Lou Jackson's ears. He strained to discern a face within the haze, yet its features remained elusive and indistinct. Bam! The violent shaking jolted Lou Jackson awake. Visions of light and strange colors swirled in his mind. He tried to open his eyes and rise, but his body refused to obey, as if an unseen force had anchored him to his bed. All of a sudden, a brilliant white light pierced through the dense darkness before him. Though the darkness surged like a tidal wave, the column of light stood unyielding, as eternal as the sun. Golden runes erupted from it, stretching into the darkness and scattering across the sky like a celestial shower of stars. How beautiful, Lou Jackson thought to himself in a daze. More and more runes appeared, eventually reaching a pinnacle, and Lou Jackson heard a sound akin to glass shattering, resonating in his ears. Then the world burst into light. Lou Jackson saw a sky as blue as the sea, a vast primeval forest, and nearby a small crescent-shaped lake. A white stream of light cascaded into the sparkling water below. Thatched huts and rice paddies peppered the landscape. Like a swallow, he swiftly soared over the small tawny villages, their smoke and fires and a clear stream. He caught a fleeting glimpse of his reflection in the stream. That looks like a round, shiny thing, he thought, perplexed. A vague realization then surfaced. Am I no longer human? Suddenly the violent shaking returned. Lou Jackson plunged into the water. The stream was too shallow to absorb the impact, and he collided with a blue stone at the bottom. The impact felt like a punch to his chest, knocking out the air in his lungs. The stream's agitation and the force of the recoil allowed his body to steadily right itself until he faced the sun-dappled surface of the water. Wasn't I up all night in my rented room, revising my work? Lou Jackson gazed silently at the sun reflecting on the river, watching as turbulent waves twisted the light into patterns beneath the water's surface. His head throbbed relentlessly as he recalled fragments of his past. All he could remember was weakly collapsing onto the bed with the smoke and glow of the neon lights in his rented room weaving around him. He also remembered opening a can of beer and sitting down at his dim computer desk, feeling his heart racing and his breathing becoming progressively labored as the world around him began spinning even more. Did I die? Well, this isn't so bad at least. I don't have to worry about my future or the burdens of living. This thought, perhaps born from long-suppressed feelings, fluttered through his mind. Surprisingly, it lifted his spirits. Looking around, he saw dark green treetops with dangling aerial roots and nimble fish swiftly gliding overhead. He could also hear the soft splashes of water. But if this goes on, it's bound to drive me crazy with boredom, he added with a sigh. He watched as the sun gradually descended from overhead, painting the sky in warm hues of pink and orange, and the water darkening beneath the treetops. 2 fish curiously circled him, and a crab even attempted to turn him over. As the moon rose, its luminous glow gently bathed the river. Lou Jackson felt a cool key flow penetrate the water, bringing a subtle sense of comfort. As he watched the moonlight envelop his body, forming a mesmerizing white halo, he was rendered utterly speechless. This experience transformed his state of mind in an unexpected and profound way. What is this? Am I absorbing the essence of the sun and moon like an immortal from legends? Wait, does that mean immortals, divine abilities, demons, ghosts, and gods are actually real? What have I become, ambicate spirit? Curiosity and excitement surged within him as the moon's halo seemed to gather strength, settling upon him. A cool sensation enveloped his body before he slipped into a meditative state akin to drifting in and out of sleep. Time passed as the chi flow thinned. Lou Jackson awoke. The crescent moon had vanished, replaced by the sun peeking over the treetops, casting a warm morning light across the river. That was fast. Lou Jackson could not help but feel a surge of joy. With focused attention, he sensed a stream of ki serenely flowing within his body, moving in circular motions around the edges. If he concentrated hard enough, he could catch a glimpse of a bluish-gray mirror lying peacefully at the bottom of the river, nestled among various colored stones. Fish swam nearby, feeding at the bottom, and a river crab busied itself with digging at the side. His vision was limited to about a meter around him. It was not particularly clear, but instead like the fuzzy and bulky television he watched in his childhood. This is my current form, isn't it? Lou Jackson smiled wryly. He then consciously stopped the flow of ki and gathered it at the center of the mirror, which emitted a faint glimmer. It seems that it doesn't do anything other than glowing. I should absorb more moonlight. Maybe that'll change something, he mused. I don't know what this mirror is made of, and I have no idea what the outside world thinks about sentient artifacts. Best stay hidden, just in case I'm found by an immortal cultivator who can destroy me without a second thought. Lee Muchin woke up in the early hours of the morning, his gaze fixed on the dilapidated roof of his house. A faint glimmer pierced through the darkness, a reminder of the small opening that had formed a few days ago. He did not have the time to repair it, which led to 3 nights of restless sleep beside him. His wife lay deeply asleep, prompting a deep sigh from Lee Muchin. She might not be aware of what's going on, but these past few days have been wild. Those immortals around Mount Dally are going crazy, turning the place upside down as if they're on some kind of treasure hunt. Everyone's terrified. All they can do is kneel and bow their heads to the ground whenever those streaks of light pass by frowning. Lee Muchin's mind was fraught with worries. At the foot of Mount Daly, their small village had always been tranquil. However, recent events had cast a shadow of fear over everyone. The mountain roads are narrow and secluded. The imperial court is too far away to be concerned, and we're usually fine with that, but a battle among immortals, their immortal techniques could easily wipe out the entire Leijin village, without sparing even a single soul. Unable to sleep any longer, Lee Muchin got up and peered out the window into the dark night. My boy's appetite grows day by day. They eat more with every meal. They'll catch some fish and crabs at Miche River tomorrow. No one can escape their fate, even if it means being killed by an immortal. The Lee family has worked hard on these barren lands for over 200 years. We can't just up and leave. With a shake of his head, Lee Muchin turned and left his house with hands clasped behind his back. Outside the house, the brown dog was still sleeping. Lee Muchin walked through the gentle morning mist, observing Leijin village as it awoke the sound of chickens, the barking of dogs, and the smoke rising from the houses. "Sang-ping, Lee," Muchin called out loudly toward the side house. He heard some noises inside before the door creaked open and a teenager burst out. "Father, Lee!" Sang-ping, a decent-looking boy with mischievous eyes, tilted his head as he looked up at Lee Muchin and asked, "What will we be doing today?" Lee Muchin waved his hand and said, "We're going to Miche River to fetch some river fish and crabs. There's not much work today. Let's bring some fresh flavors home for your mother." "Yes, father." Lee Sang-ping grabbed a rope basket and a long fork, ready to set off. With a hearty laugh, Lee Muchin headed toward the fields. The Miche River was both shallow and wide, its banks lined with large amounts of mud flats and reeds. Rather than feeding their dozens, sometimes hundreds of geese and ducks, every morning the villagers set them free to wander freely toward the river. Later in the evening, someone from the village would make their way to the river bank and call out to the birds, familiar with their keeper's voice. The geese and ducks would then follow them back home. Lee Sang-ping arrived at the Miche River before the geese and ducks were released for the day. The river was quiet, with only 2 small rafts swaying on the shore. Rolling up his sleeves and kneeling in the mud, he blindly felt around with his hands, then fixed his eyes on a flash of green in the water. "That's a good fish." Lee Sang-ping held his breath and moved swiftly. With a firm grasp, he caught the green-tailed fish by its gills and pulled it up. "Hee-hee," he chuckled, tossing the fish into his rope basket. The fish in Miche River were not usually this easy to catch. This green-tailed one must have carelessly swum downstream, and Lee Sang-ping was lucky to have caught it. As he looked at the riverbed, Lee Sang-ping noticed something unusual. A spot under the water was too smooth, faintly reflecting a silver light. Just as he was about to hold his breath again and dive in for a closer look, a loud voice called from the shore. Brother Chang-king, Lee Sang-ping instinctively hid his rope basket and turned toward the bank, where a boy that looked just over the age of 10 emerged from the reeds. "Oh, it's you, little brother. Are you here to watch over the ducks?" Lee Sang-ping asked, relieved. He then held out the basket. "Look at this green-tail. I caught it barehanded. Awesome!" Lee Yeshing exclaimed, looking enviously into the basket. Lee Yeshing's father had been bedridden for years, and his elder brother was a freeloader at home, so they often struggled for food. They frequently relied on Lee Muchin, their uncle, for meals. Lee Sang-ping, his first cousin, had always treated him like a younger brother. After a brief exchange, Lee Yeshing shook his head and said, "All right, brother, I better go check on the ducks. If I lose any, my brother will beat the crap out of me." "Off you go, then," Lee Sang-ping urged, eager to investigate the mysterious object at the bottom of the river. "All right." As soon as Li Yeshin left, Li Axangbing took a deep breath and dived into the riverbed. He groped around, and sure enough his hands found a round object emerging from the water. Li Xiangbing gasped for air and wiped his face before examining his find. The object was a palm-sized plate with a bluish-gray center and a dark iron frame. It was broken into several pieces held together only by the frame. The back was engraved with strange symbols that Li Xiangbing could not decipher. "This looks a little like my aunt's mirror," he mused. His aunt, who owned the largest field in the family, was the only one in the village who could afford such a luxury. Ordinary village girls had to make do by looking at their reflection in the water. Li Xiangbing remembered his mother taking him to see it when his aunt first acquired it. Indeed, it was more convenient than relying on water, yet the piece in his hands was a far cry from that mirror, murky and blurry. Shaking his head in disappointment, Li Xiangbing tossed it into his basket and turned back to his fishing. Lu Jiaxian had been submerged in water for nearly half a month. Starting from the third day, the moonlight's energy had stagnated, showing no signs of increase. Despite a week of effort, there was no growth. He could only make himself glow. One morning, as his gaze lingered absent-mindedly at a large green fish, a hand suddenly pressed the fish into the silt. With a swift movement, the hand seized the fish by its gills and lifted it. Lu Jiaxian, still grappling with the shock of seeing a living person for the first time, watched as a large hand scooped him up. He caught sight of a rather handsome face and felt a flicker of nervousness. The boy uttered a few unintelligible words and tossed him into a basket, leaving him to stare at the wide eyes of the green-tailed fish inside. It was at that moment Lu Jiaxian realized a serious problem. He could hear, but he might not understand. The local dialects sounded similar to the Fujian and Zhejiang dialects from his previous life, which were completely foreign to him. Even if he managed to speak, the likelihood was that the locals would not understand him either, thus complicating his integration into this new world. Observing the fish being thrown into the basket one after another, Lu Jiaxian focused, probing his surroundings. He watched the boy carefully raise the long wooden fork in his hand. From this vantage point, Lu Jiaxian had a rough idea of what this boy was thinking in the specific fish that had captured his attention. Every time the boy caught a fish, Lu Jiaxian saw him murmuring to himself. In no time, Lu Jiaxian learned the specific pronunciations of numbers 3 to 6 in the names of different fish species. Each catch provided a valuable learning opportunity, all thanks to the boy's self-talk. "I guess I'll take it one step at a time," watching the boy get up and leave. He sighed. The child seemed to be from a farming family, so perhaps he would offer what he found to his parents. Lu Jiaxian's plan was to engage with more people to gradually learn the local dialect. Meanwhile, he would seek ways to amass the energy of the moonlight while ensuring his own safety.